Good afternoon and welcome to this week's live talk show of H3 TV, where we talk about disruption and challenge and change. Not only do those always happen, but it's not really just articulating what we're going through, what disruption we have in our life, business-wise, personally, professionally, or literally. It's how do we deal with the disruptions? What do we do as strategies and systems or routines and rituals, my favorite, in order to get through the disruptions or stay in the disruptions with hope, health, and happiness? I'd like to come to you every week and bring some encouragement. Unfortunately, this week, I've had some challenging conversations with women who have women bosses that instead of elevating them and celebrating their success are threatened by their brightness. And I always want to remind you, as Marianne Williams wrote and Nelson Mandela made famous, is our greatest fear. That poem about us letting our light shine doesn't steal from anyone else. It actually inspires and encourages other people. So if you are in a position of influence, encouragement, or leadership, and you're leading someone maybe younger than you or newer, let their light shine. It doesn't steal from your light. In fact, it shines your light brighter. So I hope that this week you will be encouraged by our show. And remember, you don't have to be threatened by other people's success. By you amplifying and celebrating them, it actually makes you shine as well. So today my guest is Carol. She's going to share a little bit about her story. Please help me welcome to the stage, Carol. Hey, Carol, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Annie. It's a true pleasure to be here.
Oh, well, I'm glad you are. So tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you live, all those good things.
Thank you. So you and I know one another from a speaking group, right? Innovation Women. It's a Boston-based group. I am about 100 miles north of that in New Hampshire, and I have a cottage on a little lake. It's very serene, and I have been since 2009 helping women and others get organized, get to their next level, etc. My practice has changed over the years. Since 2015, I've really focused on coaching. And these days, I love your word disruption, because as I get, I'll just say it, better and better, probably not so different than you, as a leader of leaders, right? I want to have more fun with it. And I want to say, okay, well, are you sure about that? Is that what you really, really want? What if you could really get what you really want and play with that? So that's what I love to do.
I like it. You said your business has changed. My word I love is evolved. As entrepreneurs, we're always evolving. We start with one thing, like I'm a speaker. Okay, I'm a writer too. Okay, I'm a coach. Okay, I can facilitate a retreat. Like we evolve to, first of all, what else we're good at because we're discovering, but also what our clients need. And so I think that's so important. One thing I forgot to say as the show started is if you have questions for Carol or myself anytime throughout the show or after the show, please put them in the chat and we will respond to them as they come in and also after the show is filmed. So thanks for being here. So Carol, when I say the word disruption, just that word, how do you define it?
It's being unapologetically not just okay, but proud of your point of view. It's not being afraid to go after what you really, really want, not what you think you can get, not what you think somebody wants you to say.
Okay, so disruption is about disrupting status quo. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Disrupting the status quo, disrupting the idea of what you believe somebody else wants. And sure, that doesn't mean you're not listening to the other. We always want, the old adage is 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. This is true. So very important to do that. But I think especially as women, before we opened up this show, we were talking about women leaders versus men leaders. And, they're all wonderful folks, but you and I love to work with women leaders. And as women leaders, we have this tendency to kind of pull back. So when I think the world needs more disruptive women leaders to set the bar even higher, so that's what I mean.
I love that. I always think don't play small. Yeah. Don't say you're sorry. Don't say sorry for this, sorry for that, sorry. your voice deserves to be heard. Take up space. Be unapologetically you. And I worked with a client once for a while, and she was 6'2", and she said, "You're so lucky to be short." I don't think I'm short. I think I'm fun size, but lately I'm about 5'1". And she said, people that are smaller take up more space because it makes them want to be seen. They stand up straighter. They try to spread out. And she said, but people that are tall are often, especially women, told you're big. So they try to play small. They try to get, and I said, I never noticed that. And she said, oh, I noticed it all the time because I was always bowing down because I was 6'2", and people were like, you're so big. You're so constantly. And you were like, let me be bigger. And I was like, I really watch, I'm an observer. And so I'm always watching, are you unapologetically yourself? Do you believe your voice deserves to be heard, and that you deserve to take up space? So Carol, I want to know personally about you. What is a professional or a personal disruption that you have gone through? Something that kind of surprised
How long do you have, Annie?
So that's why we're picking one, Carol. Just one today. We're not going to talk about all the disruptions.
Yeah. Okay. So the biggest one was when I made the very big decision to leave my former husband in 2012, because not only did I leave him, but I left everything I knew behind. And I had just within the last small amount of years gotten laid off as the career I defined myself with, the one I went to college for, the one I spent years, studying for, the one I got a license and a stamp for as a landscape architect. And I literally thought of myself like within the cells of my body as a landscape architect. But in there somewhere beyond that, there was this person inside that always wanted to be a psychologist, actually, like a psychology person. I started there. So anyway, when I disrupted the idea that I was a married woman that owned a house, with the kids, I didn't have the dog, but, I may as well have, right? With the, the benefits and the job and all of that, like, the disruption happened to me in 2009 because I got laid off and it was the Great Recession. So I couldn't really find another job. I did try. But through that opening, a good friend of mine said, well, when I got laid off, she said, well, when a door closes, a window opens. And I'm just like, what are you even talking about? This is awful. Right. And it was just the beginning of that little tap from the universe that says, you need to do some different stuff. And boy, I mean, in 2009, if somebody had said to me in 2019, 10 years later, I got that right, you'd be doing something completely different. And, in 2021, you'll have your own house on the lake and you'll be a very successful, coach with a team. Like, I'd be like, what? Because right? Because it was so different. So anyway, that was the biggest disruption I ever did. And if I said it was easy, I'd be lying through every crevice.
I like both of your examples, Carol, because one disruption happened to you. And sometimes things happen to us for us, but initially it definitely feels like to us. And so that disruption of losing your job, losing your being, like you said, it was all you knew was that you were a designer, a landscape designer. But then one disruption you chose, and it wasn't necessarily definitely not an easy choice, but it wasn't a one-day decision. But it was saying, and sometimes I think disruption when we're choosing it is because of the knowing and the wondering what else, what better, what different. So we know that a listener right now is saying, hey, I am curious about this. And I'm never an advocate for leaving your marriage, but I know there are times we need to leave our marriage. And I also know that divorce doesn't just end when the paperwork ends. It just begins of a lifelong journey of what a divorce, how it affects our life in so many aspects. But I also love that you got to, hey, I'm living in this beautiful little cottage on a beautiful little piece of land, and I'm running a successful business. Like, there is hope after the heartache, and there is good coming. So I want to know, on those dark days when everything, and especially as middle-aged women, when we think about our identity as I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I've had this career, I went to school for this, I'm doing what I said I was going to do. When it's all kind of thrown up in the air, and you're not sure where the pieces are going to fall, how did you stay hopeful, believing that the future will get better in the midst of the really, really hard, dark days after leaving the marriage and knowing this really has to end?
Yeah. Okay. How did I stay hopeful? Usually, well, I leaned a lot on my friends. At one point I wrote I drew a diagram of myself, and then I put down all my angels. And one of them is my sister, and two of them together are my parents, and then all of the other ones. I reminded myself that it wasn't just me. I think the power of community is huge. The other thing I did was I let myself feel like crap sometimes. I learned through just taking one step every single day and reaching out and leaning in on people, which incidentally, my former husband always said, no, don't lean on people. Well, just the opposite turned out to be really true for me. One of my really good friends, I call her my soul sister, she said, the only way out is through. So to feel those feelings, to feel the really tough stuff and to move through it, to go to, I went to counseling, just again, how long do you have? But it was, if I said it was easy, it was really, really hard. And, but it's worth it because that's what I do these days. Cause again, life isn't perfect day in and day out, right? We have ups and downs as entrepreneurs. Everybody does. So when I run into a challenge these days, as an entrepreneur, I say, okay, wow, well, that didn't work. I wonder what's on the other side. And now I get curious. There's a person that, Jeff Walker, I don't know if you know him, but he said, his mastermind said, I don't know how, but I know the how is known. I love that.
Nice.
So I remember that. I remember there's a lesson, and then this is the universe saying pause, right? And that I know there's an answer. So that's what I do now.
Nice. So you said a couple of things that I think are important that I'm a big believer in, and I always want to repeat those things is you not only relied on relationships, you assessed and evaluated and literally wrote out who can you rely on.
Yeah.
You asked for help. I think it's such a strength to ask for help. But the third thing you said that I think is so important, and I always love to remind people that are going through disruption is when the hurricane hit our home, people would say, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, nope, not okay. Safe, but not okay. And that acknowledgement of I was not okay. I was sad. I sat in that sadness. I sat with that sadness. I went through it rather than trying to get around it and avoid it because it comes back later. You got to go through it and sit with it. So I love that. And you stayed open. So you stayed open to, I think that does help us be hopeful rather than just shut down. My world's falling apart. I'm just going to crawl in a cave and feel sorry for myself. No, this is hard, but I need some help. And I'm going to ask, and people can still say no, but I'm going to figure out a handful of people I can rely on. And then I'm going to go to them at different times and seek that. The second thing that happens to people a lot, Carol, that I find when they're going through a disruption is the first thing to go, the biggest thing they neglect is themselves, right? Like, because you're just falling apart. So you turn to the tub of ice cream, and there's nothing wrong with ice cream, but if you live in the ice cream, it can be dangerous. So how did you stay healthy? And when I say healthy, I'm not asking you, it can be physical, but I also want to know emotionally, mentally, relationally, how did you stay healthy in your career and in your community and financially? Right? A divorce can be so expensive. All those things. Was there one or two or three strategies that you said, you know what, I'm really going to focus on this one part, and here's something I did to help improve it?
At the very bare bones minimum, when I really felt like my world, and because there are many, so like the stock market, like many down here. Okay. I remember this one time in 2017, I was going through a really hard time with my kids. He was just a lot of stuff going on. And I said, oh my gosh. And everybody was sick. That's on top of it all. We all had the flu. We couldn't go outside. And I said, okay, what do we need right now? And I was like, sunshine. It was in February. And I said, and big stuff had happened to us. That's what I need. I want to go to Florida. So you know what? I just said, all right, how can I go to Florida? So at the bare bones, what I did was I asked myself, what do I need? And then I explored it. Now, I didn't end up going to Florida. I did try some things out. I picked up the phone and I tried some, because money was an issue and I really didn't have the money. So I was trying to get creative on that. That actually didn't work. So what we did instead was I booked one night. It was only one night at a hotel with a heated pool and all the things for the kids, and everything was included so that I could just sit back on my little chair and have my little tropical drink or whatever I had, and the kids could play, and just for like 24 hours, a little bit more, we got to feel like we loved ourselves. And that's what I did. Little things like that. You can ask more questions because I don't remember the full question.
No, I love that answer because I think you strategize. I always say that anticipation of a trip can be much better than the actual trip because there's no expense in anticipation and there's vision, but you checked it out. You said, how can I make this work? And I think I love that idea, Carol, because I think sometimes people go, oh, I can't afford to go to Florida, so never mind, I'm going to do nothing. And it's like, well, okay, that doesn't work, but what can I do? So I live in Florida. I don't know if you remember that about me. So I live across the street from the Gulf of Mexico, and this was my 30-year dream because I love sunshine. I love the beach. I think it's healing. I think movement's medicine. So getting out and doing those steps. So I love that you went to a hotel. I love that you found a solution. And there's a lot, there are ways to have a solution even in our house if we can't afford it. If you're in the midst of a divorce, lay out some towels, play some card game, make a picnic, do something, especially in the dead of winter up in the northern half of the United States. It is cold and it can be dark and discouraging. So that weather in itself, let alone in the midst of a disruption. So I really like that. I think that so many times people lose their health and their hope in the midst of the disruption or a relationship change or career change. How did you stay happy? And how did you find happiness or humor in the midst of the hard, in the midst of all of that?
Yeah. So just literally one step at a time. I'm trying to remember how I met her. I met this woman, Lisa, and Lisa, showed me soul collage. I didn't know what I was. She said, come on, let's go to soul collage. I said, okay. It was this Sunday afternoon and I'm very artsy. As a landscape architect, that's my absolute passion.
Yes.
And it was all these magazines cut out already. There were these little cards, and you were supposed to bring a potluck item in anything you wanted to drink, like tea and so on. Okay. And so what they did was they gathered all these, was only women, gathered all these women. We started with a guided meditation. I got to relax. I got to allow my mind to wander. And then we did this intuitive thing. We'll go over, we pick out these different things, whatever we wanted, like a pile of magazine cutouts. And then we sat down and we put them together on these cards. And I can't give you the whole process in just this little interview, but look it up, soul collage. It's not my process, it's other people's process. And now I have all these beautiful soul collage cards. And what we would do at the end, we'd have a circle. And that's the first time I learned about women's circles and the power in women's circles. And we would ask, I know it's going to sound crazy, but we ask the card questions. And what that really was us tuning in to our own beautiful intuition. We have so many answers. And it is my viewpoint that we are accessing our divinity. So whatever your beliefs are, please allow them to be that. Mine is that the divine lives in us as well as surrounds us. And when we can access that intuition and articulate it, and for me, it's through art and other ways, we can then grow, and then our happiness grows and our hope grows, and everything is all about hope.
There you go. Hope and health and happiness. I like it. So, Carol, how have you used what you learned through the divorce, through the job, through so much change, but in particular the divorce, because that has so many layers to it? How have you used what you've learned to help other people, to support other people?
Yeah, thank you for asking. The first two people are my most important people in my life, who are my children. I have two boys. They are 22 and 16. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the person that I have chosen to be has shaped them and helped them in their world. My 22-year-old lives in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, I live in on the other side of the country, right, the Northeast. He is out. He's not really a health coach, but he sells products that help people be healthy. And there's this, so he's 22. He has befriended this man who's 40 years old and has changed his life. He was very unhealthy. Now he's literally running half marathons with my son and climbing mountains. So that's one way, is just literally through example. My other son's 16. He just got his license. He just fixed his own car up. So he has a car job, a license. He's a ski instructor. And he is a musician as well. He just started to sing and play guitar, and he is a leader. He does leadership stuff at his school. So those are perfect examples. But if you're asking me about my work, my paid work, my people, I would say that I serve, I'm going to just be unapologetic in this. My company is Beacon of Light Center, and I consider myself a beacon of light in the darkness. And what I do is I help people gain a different perspective on themselves so that they can dream bigger than they ever dared dream, and take the steps, which are behind me incidentally, to go from sometimes feeling scattered and stuck, to be honest with you, to being focused and confident so that they can live their lives, as we just talked about, being unapologetic, being the leader they were meant to be. Because it is my assertion that all of us are here for some purpose. And it is our job, and quite honestly, like our responsibility, to access our own internal wisdom by reaching out to whomever. So for me, as you say, I didn't learn this all myself. I reached out to friends, and one thing leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing. And it's the thing that leads to the thing. I don't know if you know Victoria Labalme. I love her. She talks about failing forward, and she always talks about the thing that leads to the thing. And great book, if you don't know it, Risk Forward. And so that's how I help people, is I start out at the very beginning. We really look at, what's going on for you? What do you wish? What do you no longer want to tolerate? And how much do you really want it? And then we just go through the process, and it's a beautiful thing.
Carol, do you have a success story of somebody you have worked with, in your coaching practice, and they were here, and whatever work you did with them, you brought them to here? Do you have a success story?
I have many of them, so I'll just select one.
Yeah.
So, and this is all on my public YouTube, so everything I say isn't anything she hasn't already said publicly, right? So her name is Nancy. She lives in Indiana. She's a leadership coach. She had been doing her coaching practice maybe for about 10, 15 years, something like that. She's getting really burned out, working way too hard for too little money, and she's in her 60s. She came to me because she couldn't DIY it anymore and was about to throw in the towel on her business. Through our work together, we worked together for about a year. And she was scared to lay the money down, just being real. But I got to know her through smaller things. At the end of the year, she was working less in the hours that she wanted to work. She was having more fun. She started doing creative things, bringing that creativity into her work. Got healthier with her physical body, her mental body. She started doing some things mentally to release some old trauma, opened up a really old wound between herself and her husband. There was this big secret that was weighing on her, got rid of that. Lots of times my people say their husbands are the problem, but usually they're not. It's within. It's very interesting. And get this, to tie it all together and to sum it all up, and I still can't believe she said this, towards the end of the year when she's calculating everything and looking at her QuickBooks, she said, "Carol, I can't believe this." She goes, "In 42 years of marriage, I have never made more money than my husband. But this year, I have." And she goes, "Carol, I'm taking long weekends. I'm not working at night anymore. It's unbelievable. So
Yeah.
she is one of my most, I mean, I have other stories, but I just love that story because I just think about her and smile. So.
And it's success in so many areas, right? I always ask people, how do you define success? Is it your business growing? Is it the promotion? Is it having good marriage? Is it your healthy kids? I don't know. What is it for people? So I love that this is a very well-rounded. Is there anything, Carol, you would have told your younger self, or you wish somebody would have told you before the divorce, before the layoff, something you wish you would have known before a disruption that you could tell our listeners?
Yeah. And I hate to do this too, but I'm going to give you two answers. Number one, always go with your gut feeling. Always. And number two, which is related, because that's the beginning. That's my younger self, sort of like 18 to 22 self. Then the right before I got divorced or right after I got divorced self, when I was in that transition, because I feel like many people might be listening that are in that funny transition time. Slow down. That was my biggest problem, is I was too quick because I got to make the money. I got to do it. I got to do the thing. And you know what I did? I didn't pay attention and do the due diligence that I needed to do to really assess what I needed to be ultimately successful, not just to exist. And I wasted so much time and energy trying to make a buck and do the things and do. If I just slowed down a little bit and reached out for help, plunked down some money, took a leadership course or something. No, I was running around. So those are the two things.
Those are good things. So Carol, any last secret messages or tips of wisdom that you want to give our, not secret messages, tips of wisdom or experience, I don't know what I was saying, that you want to share with our listeners as we kind of wind down here? Is there any, like, this is your slogan or this is your thought you wish the world knew?
Yeah. I wish the world knew how powerful and important each and every one of us is. We are pure love, pure light. And when we can stop long enough to truly embrace our essence and honor that, and then give forth of our gifts to the world would be completely different if each and every person did that.
Yeah, so true. Can we just love one another and share that, be that light? So Carol, what is the best way to get a hold of you? So if I have a listener here that's like, I want more and I want to know about her, I want to work with her, what would be the one best way to connect with you?
Please go to my website, unscatterme.com. You'll find all my contact information, and you'll find a free guide to get yourself started in a DIY way. That's what you'll find.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here with us, and feel free to leave those links in the comments below so people can just click, which makes it a little bit easier for our listeners. Thank you to our listeners for being here, where we gather every week and talk about disruption, hope, and health and happiness, the most important things in life. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. Take care.